Nintendo is suing? Yeah, we call that Monday. Except for today. Today's Sunday. As we speak, Nintendo, aside from Palworld, is currently in another lawsuit. May as well bring it up since we're on the topic of Nintendo and lawsuits, right? There's no shortage of those. Whether it be fan games they're taking down, emulators, criticism, Nintendo loves to go to court. It's practically their pastime. Nintendo is suing accessory company Genki for leaking the Switch too early to advertise their products. They're seeking complete destruction of all Genki's Switch 2 branded accessories. Jesus Christ. Let's not pretend like we didn't expect the Switch 2 to look like the Switch 1, Nintendo, okay? Like, take it easy. Nobody cares if this thing got leaked. You may care, but it made no difference to your sales or presentation. There's nothing that could really harm Nintendo. They have a mindless fan base. Nothing was spoiled for anyone. It's what we expected. A tablet that renders at 540p and outputs at 1080p, okay? Nothing groundbreaking, nobody got hurt, but all Nintendo knows how to do is take it to court. As we can see here in the lawsuit documents, at the CES event, Genki demoed and promoted unauthorized purported mock-ups and renderings of the Nintendo Switch 2 and its accessories. Further, Genki presented at least 2 unauthorized 3D printed mock-ups of the Nintendo Switch 2 to reporters. Genki boasted its alleged early access to the unreleased console and allowed guests to hold and measure the mock-ups. At Genki's CES booth, Genki CEO Edward Tsai personally showed off the 3D printed mock-ups and stated to different reporters that Genki had access to an authentic Switch 2, on which Genki based the mock-ups, renderings, and 3D printed mock-ups. Genki's representatives, including its CEO, also did multiple media interviews discussing their 8 accessories and purportedly confirming specific highly confidential designs and functionality of the not yet announced Nintendo Switch 2. An article detailing these statements from Genki is attached as Exhibit B. Genki also displayed a video at its CES booth showing a purported 3D render of the Nintendo Switch 2, which it later also posted on its website. Genki included Nintendo's marks on its rendering of the Nintendo Switch 2 dock, including Nintendo's registered design mark showing and registration number. Well, I'm not reading that number. Now, I do want to have some sympathy for Genki, but you should know Nintendo by now. Nintendo's like one of the companies out there who doesn't appreciate fan projects that are free. We are talking about one of the most spiteful companies in existence. They will sue over anything. They love to sue. But yes, Nintendo has this massive ego where they believe they are the original creators of everything. Hell, their own fan base actually believes that too. Genki's activities have been designed to capitalize on and appropriate the public's anticipation for the release of Nintendo's next generation console. Calling it next gen is a little bit too far, but anyway, Genki has used Nintendo's trademarks and trade dress in connection with the marketing of its business and its unauthorized third-party accessories in violation of Nintendo's rights in those marks. On information and belief, Genki falsely represented that it had access to an authentic unreleased model of Nintendo's next-generation console. Genki has since stated through representatives that its claims of access were false. Genki's claims of compatibility would be impossible to guarantee without unauthorized, illegal early access to the Nintendo Switch 2. Thus, Genki has misled and is misleading the public as to its ability to guarantee the compatibility of its products with the Nintendo Switch 2. Additionally, or alternatively, Genki in fact illegally and or illicitly gained access to a pre-release model of the Nintendo Switch 2, rendering its statements otherwise objectively false. Defendants infringing use of Nintendo's trademarks in its advertising is in direct competition with Nintendo's and its licensees' legitimate marketing of Nintendo's new console and authorized accessories. In this case, I'd hate to say it, but it does seem like Genki is guilty here. And to be honest, they were asking for it, knowing exactly what kind of company Nintendo is. Also trying to say, no, we didn't have an actual Switch, it's just a mock-up, 3D printed. The question being, how in the world did you even get those dimensions? They definitely had access to a Switch 2. They definitely released an early view of it to the public, and that's landed them, a lawsuit that I don't think they can actually win. And I'm not really on their side because that was just stupid. But here's where the nail in the coffin comes in, because this company is pretty fucking dumb, as we can see here. Following Genki's CES participation, Genki updated its website and advertisements to boast about its early access to Nintendo Switch 2 information and its attention-grabbing leak of the console renders at CES saying, "Can you keep a secret? We can't."
Please get what you fucking deserve!
Yeah, no, you're done, Zo. Nintendo may actually sue these guys out of business, because I doubt they will be able to pay what Nintendo wants them to pay for this. Nintendo isn't the kind of company that sues as a lesson. They sue to run you out of business. That advertisement on their website alone right there is an open and shut case. They're done. However, when it comes to Pocket Pair, that's where things are not swinging in Nintendo's favor, and I am glad. For those of you who played Palworld last year and are still playing it, you know, the game that broke records on Steam, put Nintendo to shame, and showed Game Freak how you're supposed to evolve the Pokemon formula, you've probably been rooting for these guys to kick Nintendo's ass in court. And it would seem things are starting to turn in their favor, as we got an update on their court case, and I'm surprised more people didn't report on it. We need Palworld to win. We need Nintendo put in their place. We need Nintendo to see what they could have and have failed to achieve multiple times, delivering us the most underwhelming, ugliest, unexciting Pokemon products for years. And let's be real, Nintendo is suing Palworld out of spite and jealousy, not because of the character designs. Nintendo is a very spiteful company. They don't like to be outshined or outclassed. And that's exactly what this studio did. For those of you who already know, and for those of you who don't know, here's a recap. Nintendo has taken Pocket Pair to court over copyright infringement, even going as far as to try and get an injunction to block Palworld's release. Yeah, that's how petty Nintendo is. As we speak, they currently have 3 anti-Palworld patents. If you're wondering what those patents are, it's on things like game mechanics that they believe Palworld outright stole. In spite of this, the devs have continued to update the game, carefree, not paying attention, and that's based. It's also obvious a lot of those mechanics that Nintendo has patented involve probably things like the glider and climbing that you see in Breath of the Wild, which is a game Pocket Pair brings up, as they have a multi-argument defense against Nintendo. Some of these arguments don't hold up all that well to me, but others are quite bulletproof. The first one involves patent JP7545191B1, which was filed by Nintendo as late as 2024, which goes to show you how petty Nintendo is, okay? They saw Pocket Pair use this mechanic, and then they decided to go file it. My best guess being Game Freak is asking Nintendo to do this and get their hands dirty for them. It was clearly all done in the last minute to file a lawsuit against Palworld, because beforehand, plenty of other games had used a similar mechanic. Because you're wondering, what is that patent number, Frit? It's a system for capturing and deploying creatures in a virtual space, similar to the Pokeball mechanic in the Pokemon series. Specifically, it relates to using capture items to capture characters in a virtual world and releasing them into battle. The patent also covers the activation and use of writable characters. What's interesting here to me is that in counter to that, Pocket Pair doesn't bring up the best examples, noting games like Titanfall 2, Far Cry 5, Tomb Raider and Octopath Traveler, and Craftopia. I can't speak on behalf of those games, I haven't really played them. But there are plenty of other games that use a capture system, from Digimon to Temtem to Dragon Quest Monsters. Specifically, it involves throwing a capture device and then being able to release those creatures for battle or other situations, and there are plenty of other better games to note as examples. Games that Nintendo has never taken to court. However, when it involves being able to ride the creatures and fly on them, they have a much better argument here, noting games like Ark. I think it's absolutely insane that Nintendo thinks they were the first and they own the right to switch writable objects. They're not even close. That one, Nintendo is completely wrong on. I can see why they would be upset about a capture method similar to theirs, but like I said, there's so many notable games that have done this for decades. In general, when it comes to this lawsuit, it's a lot more involved in the gameplay mechanics and the patents with them over character designs, because I don't think Nintendo's going to be able to win that one. And like I said, what it involves this patent, there are so many games that are already doing all of these things, from capturing monsters to flying to climbing to sneaking, and they come from so many notable devs. It just so happens that when it involves Palworld, that's the one time Nintendo wants to sue over this mechanic, because again, they are spiteful. They don't like that Palworld outshined them, and they don't want to compete with it. They don't want a title like that, especially a title like that, to be on the Switch too. Mark my words, they will never allow that game to be on the Switch too. Even though personally, if I were Nintendo, I would give the boot to Game Freak and be like, welcome aboard, Pocket Pair, but instead, this is what we're getting. But no, of course, Nintendo just cannot survive without being in charge and in control of everything. Even a mechanic like this, that they've had multiple opportunities to sue over, but they chose Pocket Pair. And it's no coincidence why. These patented mechanics like mounting and capturing are universally applied by a ton of games. And we're talking about games that don't even revolve around those mechanics, but are just a side gameplay mechanic. It's obvious that Pocket Pair is trying to prove in court that Nintendo is filing this lawsuit in bad faith, hence why they bring up examples like Zelda and Pikmin 3, which are Nintendo IPs, so you'd figure, why bring up Nintendo's own IPs? Aren't they allowed to use their own patent? And that's because several of these mechanics existed in prior Nintendo games, and not just Nintendo games, but other developers' games, long before it was patented. Hell, even the game that Pocket Pair made before Palworld already had this gameplay mechanic in use. But if you thought the patent for capturing creatures and the patent for mounting monsters and riding them is pathetic, the third one is even more pathetic. Patent number 7493117. This patent focuses on character movement and collision, specifically in scenarios involving character interactions and pathfinding. It also addresses a mechanic where players engage in battles by launching one creature at another. Nintendo alleges that Palworld's mechanics around creature combat infringe on it.
This is mine, and this is mine, and that's mine, and this is mine.
This one is the most pathetic one. Like, oh my god, Nintendo, you are out of your mind with this one. You're desperate. They have thrown 3 copyright infringements at them, and all 3 are completely disingenuous. But this one takes the cake. This one shows you that Nintendo's reaching for anything they can. And it's not about winning the lawsuit, it's about making Pocket Pair's life as miserable as possible. Pocket Pair then goes on to argue that these mechanics don't directly infringe on Nintendo's patents, even if they were deemed valid, because there are counterpoints made here. For instance, gameplay mechanics. Pocket Pair argues that Palworld doesn't rely on the same button operations between combat and non-combat mode that Nintendo's patent describes. And then the clear difference in genres, Pokemon is a role-playing game, and Palworld is a survival crafting action game. And that distinction right there should be more than enough, right? In general, these 3 patents will not hold up, and Palworld has the upper hand, or so it would seem. Because the ramifications of Nintendo winning this lawsuit could greatly impact game developers. It could set a precedent that makes it harder for developers to innovate. Because let's face it, Game Freak ain't doing shit. Gamers are hungry, they want more out of Pokemon, and other devs are providing it. And that is a problem for Nintendo. Because rather than saying we can outdo that, they aim to disingenuously sue their competition out of business. I mean, I could go on a long list of examples like Ni no Kuni or Shin Megami Tensei. This lawsuit only serves to stifle competition and discourage other people from trying to improve and innovate the Pokemon formula. And the amount of Nintendo fanboys I see on Reddit praying Palworld is shut down is insane. With support like that, who needs lawyers? Just unleash Nintendo fanboys at Pocket Pair headquarters and they'll do more damage than the court. Anyways, there's nothing else you need to know other than Nintendo is very petty, and this lawsuit just got a whole lot more interesting. Anyways, I will be streaming 1 p.m. Pacific time today. Be there. We're gonna be covering a lot of hate coming my way. It's fun. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. if you so choose to. And who knows? If I reach 100K, perhaps it's time I do that face reveal. And I'll see you in the next video.
Free Congo sucks ass.